Welcome to Westeros.org's bonus material for episode 6, The Laws of Gods and Men. We will follow the same format as we had last week, meaning that we will start with some background material. This will be about Braavos today, and then we will cover our highs and lows before we go into a longer discussion of each story element that is present in this episode. So, Braavos, we get quite the introduction to Braavos in this episode. They get added to the title credits, and it's amazing work, really. The way it looks, the way the Braavos sequence looks, and the way Braavos itself looks as we sail into the lagoon and under the Titan. It's that was really one of the highlights of the episode, and we have probably covered a bit of Braavos, I think, in a previous video, but we actually know quite a bit more these days, thanks to the work on World of Ice and Fire, thanks to the Lands of Ice and Fire as well, which knows that we have, a great map of Braavos and all these things. So we thought we'd revisit the subject, though, and start with the history of Braavos. And as one of the free cities, Braavos is, well, they're all, in a way, daughters of Valyria, in that their existence very much depended on Valyria, whether they were founded as direct colonies, or, some of them were sort of for-profit colonies for trade and all of that. Some of them were founded by religious dissidents, Norvos, for example. And Braavos is an outlier in that it certainly wasn't a place that Valyria wanted founded. It's more, the bastard daughter of Valyria. It was founded by former slaves from Valyria. There was a fleet of slaves, and they mutineered, were able to take over the ships, and then wanted to get as far away from Valyria as possible. So they sailed up north in Essos, and they found this hidden away, thanks to the moon singers, the legends say. They led them to this lagoon where they would be safe, and this obviously recalls the founding of Venice. Obviously, there's a lot of similarities between Braavos and Venice, just writ a bit larger in a fantasy scale, and so they hide themselves away in this lagoon and build a city there, all these former slaves from all sorts of backgrounds, and eventually they reveal themselves to the world. They have been completely out of touch, really, building their strength so that they can stand on their own and not fear the other cities and so on. And that's the Braavos that we have today, a very powerful nation.
Yeah, Braavos today is most famous for its merchants, its purple-hulled ships that travel the world, and its navy. Its navy is the most powerful navy in all the world that we know of. In large part thanks to the arsenal, again, very much based on Venice here. I mean, the Venetian sort of medieval, sort of Renaissance navy got the creation of the building of galleys and war galleys down to an art form, basically. They basically prefabricated parts, and it was basically a factory to produce ships, and they could produce ships very quickly. And in the books it said that the arsenal can turn out a full war galley from start to finish in a single day. So that shows, they could lose 20 ships, and in 20 days they've got replacements for them. But the real power of Braavos is in wealth, is in economic strength. It has developed, thanks to the Iron Bank of Braavos, a tremendous influence that spans most of the known world, basically. As far as, ET, there are people who know what the Iron Bank is. They have loans and investments and so on being dealt with by the Iron Bank. The founding of the Iron Bank, I mean, it can be said really that the founders of the Iron Bank and their descendants are very important people. They are kind of a nobility. The nobility of Braavos are largely people who have ties to the Iron Bank from ancestral period of time. The bank, as depicted in this episode, I think it is fairly accurate in that they really just care about the bottom line of continuing to do their business with people, and but they will have their due. People won't get away from them. They are money lenders par excellence. They are people And obviously, again, you can see the Venetian, the Italian history here. George is obviously drawing from the medieval, the Renaissance Italian banking families and the medieval banking families like the Riccardis and so on. But again, on a much larger scale, they are. I don't want to guess how enormously wealthy and powerful and influential the Iron Bank is, but people treat it quite casually that they've toppled kingdoms and lords and things. They've been really a key force in Braavos' strength.
Yeah.
So when you see everyone starting to talk about them quite a lot more, last episode there's the whole issue with the Lannisters are afraid they can't really keep covering the debt that the Crown has to the Iron Bank. They need somebody else to do it. Stannis is desperate for support. So I think it's fair to say that the Iron Bank is probably going to be playing more and more significant a role as the series goes on. At least through, I think, the next season, I think they're going to be pretty important. They might eventually start moving away from the economic side of things, but I think, yeah, it's going to be pretty key, and I'm looking forward to, I think, that we're going to be seeing Braavos more.
Yeah.
Because, as Linda said...
As much they invested in making it look so awesome, I can't believe they would want to show more of it.
And with that, let's actually go to the highs and lows.
Yes, the visual effects, I think, of this episode are definitely one of the highs.
Tremendous effects.
I mean, this season looks amazing. If we'd had this sort of look, I mean, part of it is that a lot of it is in Essos. And they've really gone with a wonderful grand scale there. I think we would have wanted to see more of that in Westeros. I mean, we were disappointed in some of the visuals of the first season in that it looked a lot smaller and kind of grungier, like the tourney.
Yeah. No, this
for
is
example,
true. This is true.
It didn't have the color and the pageantry and the scale that we expected.
Yeah.
And we're really getting that in Essos.
Yeah, I mean, we have the shot of it's even the credit, that lengthy bit of showing Braavos of the iron, the coins rolling down, very cheeky, very clever, sort of mechanical Titan raising his arm.
Yeah, raising the sword up from the Titan there. That
was as I first saw it. They got it wrong. The sword's supposed to be raised up, and then okay.
Yeah,
really clever. And then just the visual of seeing yourself, and being able to look at the Lands of Ice and Fire map, where there is a whole... George actually drew out a map of Braavos, and Jonathan Roberts... It
is incredibly detailed.
Incredibly detailed map, and Jonathan Roberts expanded on it and cleaned it up and made this really beautiful map for the Lands of Ice and Fire map collection. And you can see they clearly use it as a visual reference.
Yeah.
There's so many bits that you can pick out. So that was really cool. And then stuff like Meereen seen again... And of course Drogon.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the dragon is one of the best looking dragons ever put to screen.
Can I have one of those, please?
Not that large.
Okay.
Not that large.
One, then.
Really quite amazing visually. Hats off. I mean, it's whatever problems we have with episodes of decisions they make, we can't really have any fault with how ambitious they can be.
Oh no, absolutely.
Visually speaking, in terms of production, it's just
and it
stunning.
really looks epic, and I like the fact that there are scenes now that finally you can see and you can just go, wow, that this really looks like how I imagine parts of the world looking. Because other than, I think, the wall early on, there weren't really any of those wow moments of amazing visuals, and now we're really getting some of those, and I'm happy because the world is very important.
In a similar vein, Alik Sakharov, hats off to him. I think definitely my favorite director who's worked on the series now. I mean, I keep going on and on about what is dead may never die, the letters scene, that single candle illuminating. It's just gorgeous, and this episode is filled with gorgeous framing, lighting. I mean, you can see how rich the lighting is in like the cell scene. I just had to stop and look and look at Tyrion with half his face black and half white light,
and I really like how also he uses the angles of shooting people from down below sometimes, and then getting the perspectives, very much playing with the perspectives and angles of sort of power dynamics of how he's framing people and showing them from different angles.
No, like case in point, I mean, right at the start of the Braavos scene where Stannis has to, and it's all silent. The whole thing where he's realizing I'm sitting like a poor man on a bench, and they're the ones sitting enthroned above me in judgment, and you can see a struggle, and he doesn't say
and also in the trial scene, all the shots of Tywin sort of looking down on
Yes,
Tyrion, very imposing.
There's someone who did something online, I forget who this is, who talks a lot about the use of sightlines. And Alex Graves has actually done some pretty good use of sightlines, but I think Sakharov is like, it's like enshrined in how he does it, because he really uses how people are looking at one another. Who's looking up, who's looking down. He's using, it's just, I adore his work. I absolutely adore it. And it's a shame. I've linked it. I'll see if I can remember to actually link it in this video. There's a great profile of him in the Moscow Times. And he has, I mean, it's not a shame. I mean, he has a lot of work ahead of him. He's worked on, I think, on The Americans. He's working on this Netflix, or is it Stars series, Marco Polo.
Oh, yeah.
He's doing a couple, something on Black Sails. I think they said it was 2 episodes or something. I don't know. What they don't mention his upcoming work is, they don't mention that he's going to be working on Game of Thrones next season. So I don't know. I'm hoping that's just in the mission.
He does seem to have quite a full plate.
But he does have quite a full plate, and deservedly.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I would love to see him next season.
Although I waste him on Black Sails. Yeah.
Yeah, it just, you know. But anyways, so the direction, if I were to pick a scene that I really like, that's something that really stood out. I mean, just as a minor thing, the return of Salvador San, I love Sala. I love Luciano Monti's performance. It's so funny. That joke. I love the way that he used that joke, because we've heard the joke. It's an old worn joke. Yeah. And then the Bryan Cogman has a clever bit with the prostitutes. We're fully aware of what the punchline is.
I had filled in the punchline right before they did, actually.
Yes,
so. I think you had vaguely forgotten.
I vaguely forgotten.
So I filled in the punchline before they did, and then they come along. So.
Really funny. But more seriously, I mean, the trial in general, as considered, and the end of Peter Dinklage's performance, really powerful stuff. Yeah. But I'll go to something a bit smaller, and I think it's, because it then feeds right into our lows. Yes. Which is the Ramsay and Reek scene in the bath with Beth.
Yes. And I mean, why on earth did we get Theon last season?
Yeah.
This would have been, I feel, so incredibly powerful if this is the Theon we picked up with without knowing precisely what had happened to him.
True, I hadn't really.
I mean, this is what happens in the books, in the sense that we get introduced to this incredibly destroyed person who is utterly devoted out of fear to Ramsay.
Yeah, completely brainwashed.
And we don't know what has happened. That starts coming out, all the horrors that have been visited upon him. But that would have been, I think that would have been amazing TV.
Yeah,
to dare to do that. So I think that doesn't make this scene any worse, but it's sad seeing how strong this scene is, and it would have stood on its own.
Yeah, it would have stood on its own, I think.
Because it really gets across it.
And I think Ian Rian's performance is great. I think he really gets the menace and the sort of how terrorized Theon is.
And I like that it's more toned down than the outright crazy that he was doing last season when he was torturing Theon. Here it's just that
you're my pet. Yes. You're a good boy, and now you're going to do this for me. So really great work there. But like I said, it feeds into, because the stuff before that, I have to say, is not a highlight of Bryan's work on the series.
No, I mean, they had to obviously introduce the fact, because what that scene obviously establishes is that Theon is so broken that he cannot be rescued at this moment. He doesn't recognize himself as Theon. This had to be established. But the way they found of establishing it, of this sudden attack by Asha, which is preceded by a very awkward speech.
The speech is very, there's some things about it which sort of...
But it's not very Ironborn.
Yeah, there's something about it which I question in terms of, like, future story, but that's me speculating. Maybe we're dropping aspects, so that doesn't matter. But I wish it was more of an Ironborn speech. To me,
going on about the fact that, oh look, they've done all these things to your poor princess, like Ironborn would be a bit more, well, okay, I guess he was weak, so fuck him.
That's not the angle. It should have been much more the insult done to us.
As a people,
you're gonna let it stand, as a people. Yeah. Are we gonna let it stand? No, we're gonna shove our axes right up our arses and go on. I mean, that should have been how I would have liked to see the Ironborn speech carried out. It's fine. But anyone could have given that speech. Eddard Stark could have given something like that. Jamie could have, anyone. So it's basically it's like a generic Westerosi speech, and it should have been more Ironborn. It should have been more of a rough survival of the fittest. Like go and look at something John Milius wrote or something to get the real macho thing. That should have been it. And then from there, we have the attack on the Dreadfort, which is like 10
You like
people.
the fight choreography.
I like the fight. Well,
Yeah.
but the absurdity
Yeah.
of this full... you have to assume that it has a full garrison.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing to say that there's no troops around.
They break in super easy.
They jump in, and... You know,
oh, we got random annoying sex scene before that as well. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I was surprised that Miranda doesn't show up later in that scene in any context.
No, we just hear her.
We just hear her. Yeah, no,
breaking in.
Yeah, it's a bit odd, but I don't
Yeah.
really mind. But yeah, that's how Ramsay spends his nights. Yeah, okay. But it's just sort of, and obviously they're playing on what Theon did when he attacked Winterfell. He snuck in similarly, but Winterfell had almost no one left. There was always clever stratagem used to denude it of defenders so that they, 20 guys could actually take it. Here, very different. There's no sign that that's the case. They still manage to break in and cause all this havoc. And then the fight scene's really well shot. And I think it's a better shot scene than last episode's big fight. I thought that one, I don't think it's really Michelle McLaren's strong suit. And I mean, the basic conception of, the Night's Watch just rushes in and this is an outright open battle, and it felt very awkward.
Yeah.
This one, and I think partly the awkwardness is because it's out and open and she didn't move the camera around so much. So the fact that these are people doing choreographed moves is a little too clear.
Oh, yeah.
It came a little too slow.
Here, the tight, cramped space works better.
Yeah, and he used it like there's a shot. I love that tracking shot where he's behind the dog kennels. So you see him partly through the bars, and it really looks violent and it looks like a real struggle. And I thought that was terrific. But then Ramsay comes in, and fighting happens, and then
this little standoff with Asha.
Yeah.
Not Yara. Well,
Asha.
Asha.
Okay, well, Yara may sit there staring as he's putting the key in there, and then decide let's run.
Well, I like the fact that she is really staying there, watching the whole time. She doesn't start running.
Yeah.
She waits until he's turned the key, and then apparently she runs.
That's a direction issue, I have to say. That's a little slip on Sakharov's part. It really should have been much more immediate. That said,
not only do the dogs...
Asha Greyjoy, on the other hand, when he turned away to do that, would have taken her axe and thrown it at him and buried it in his head, and that would have been that.
I mean, he has to turn the key. He has to let them...
He has to put away his weapons to turn the key, and it felt so awkward and strange and silly.
And then there's just sort of desperate jog down to the beach, where you hear the dogs in the background, but you don't see them, so they're very slow dogs.
Well, I mean, they were able to scale the wall, I guess, and come down that way. So the dogs had to go for these winding passages. And maybe Waldo was blocking their path at some point. I don't know. It
was clumsy.
It was clumsy, and I don't know whether it was like, oh gosh, we had intended to do more of this. I could see it. Like they had intended to make more of it. What I would have done is at the point where they realized like we can't for whatever reason, like. And someone said, guys, this is going too quickly. It's too small scale. It doesn't really sell it. I would have had them have Ramsay and Reek on another hunt with Miranda or something, and have Asha and company ambush them or something.
Yeah.
Have a similar sort of situation develop with Ramsay's men coming and Ramsay or Reek even.
And maybe they managed to isolate
screaming for help
Reek,
and getting help.
And then they come and they're trying to get him, and then the men are riding back, and because he's screaming for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Something like that would have been. I think, more suited to what they ultimately wanted to do, which was to show that Theon was... I mean, they wouldn't have gone to the visual of Theon running back into the kennel, which was a great little visual. Like, literally, as soon as he bites his sister and gets away from her, he cowers in the kennel again. Fantastic bit there. But it would have sold it without the absurdity around it.
Yeah, because, I mean, you had to get the information out, but pushing the story around and the circumstances so much...
And it's sort of like the stuff where we complained about with what they were doing in the fourth episode... Forcing the story to these weird places that aren't really comfortable.
Oh, because we need to get... It's obvious. It's really obvious when you see...
I would have reconceived that if it was originally conceived as bigger, or maybe at least make it a much quieter slip in and have Ramsay almost stumble across it and no time for alarms and something like that.
But if they manage to perhaps sneak in and they're trying to get him out, and then he starts raising the alarm, basically.
At the very least, establish that there's no garrison. Like, it's practically empty because Roose is off with most of the troops. Establish something to explain why it's like it is. I'll assume it. I will give them credit and say, well, they actually intended it to be like practically an empty castle because Roose had taken everyone except a few guys.
Oh, Roose is supposed to be there right now, isn't he?
We don't know where he is. He could be off marching against some minor rebel Northman or something.
So.
But they could have established it, So the failure to do that makes it very much a low point. And then one other thing, and this is briefly because we're kind of running along on this. Emilia Clarke's performance is people have been kind of, and I've been ignoring it, and I've been this, but people are really starting to lay into Emilia's performance as Daenerys, kind of wide, and feeling that it's not
the range isn't there.
At the range is, but it worked really well in the first season when she's introduced that she's playing a certain thing, which is and then now, in particular to me, it's like she's going. I mean, in the last episode she did as well. She goes to this really. Her queen voice is like an evil queen voice, and it's like so affected and forced.
Yeah.
And then here, like when his daughter is introduced and his interlocutor is speaking for him,
she doesn't seem to have, I think, the sort of the naturally commanding presence, which, despite her age in the books, it seems like Dany is supposed to have something of a commanding presence and being able to impress on people.
Yeah, here Emilia seems to feel that she has to it has to be forced out. It's like it's completely unnatural. So Dany, I mean, the way she kind of responded to that bit was like, wow, that was like super harsh. And then she's back to something which I feel more natural, which is attempting to be pleasantries. I mean, and even if it's facetious, I mean, even if it's the form, at least she's trying. It's more political. Whereas here, that initial thing is like, wow, too much, dial it down.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know. I'm not. I don't want to go too far, but I don't know.
I also think it was a big mistake to make his daughter this incredibly meek, sort of begging her rather than just eloquently presenting his case.
I would have liked to see him as like the Roman orator, kind of laying out a really thoughtful and a cool.
He's supposed to be a power.
He is
in the city.
I mean, if you take the fact that all these Meereenese are wearing tokars in the novels, which are 8 togas, there's a certain Roman patrician thing going on in how, and his dark character in the novel is very much a patrician, and the classic
Cool,
stoic, cool, composed. You know, so it would have been nice to see that. I think it would have more valuable later for what they're doing in this with the story, because he is a character who's going to be more present in future seasons, I guess. But
he's half crying.
But I mean, so the thing is, they obviously the actor and the writers have interpreted like, let's make him less arguing as a legalistic, cool kind of laying down the groundwork, make it a plea from emotion, and obviously it has an effect on Dany, and I'm fine with that. But yeah, I don't know. It's partly I just
not quite sure where they're going with it, obviously, but it's one of those when you change a character and you're
just concerned. But I mean, it's not like I have a problem with the performance of the guy as it is. It's more in reflection of what Emilia's doing than.
I mean, I think we can finish off the highs and lows with another little nagging low, which also has to do with a changed character. Poor Mace Tyrell.
Yeah.
He's being treated as a complete buffoon, complete comedic relief. And
baffling.
A lot of it obviously has to do with playing up Olenna's role, whereas in the books she has to work around him. She cannot she might think in private that he's an idiot, but she can't just walk roughshod all over him.
And
here everyone does.
Everyone does. Like, I can't buy that the character we're seeing here is the same character who in the second season married his daughter to Renly in a play for the throne. Yeah. Like, which is something that we're told, he did against Olenna's wishes and so on.
We're told in the books.
In the books, what are we told?
I don't know that we're told on the show.
I think we were actually told similarly where she talks to Sansa, where we're talking about how Renly dressed. They use the same lines, I think, about him dressing well. Wasn't making him fit to be a king, but Mace said whatever. They decided to go way too meek and buffoonish, and it's so strange to have this very distinguished actor, Roger Ashton Griffiths, playing him, and then just muzzle him into a clown role. Why?
I mean, the idea that Tywin would...
My good man, fetch...
Yeah, be a good man and fetch my quill and paper. Treating him like a servant.
Silly. All right, so...
but that's our highs and lows.
That's highs and lows. So for those of you who are happy with that, you can now step off and we will now go story by story.
Yeah.
To discuss the rest of it. All right, so the first thing we see again is the Stannis storyline, Braavos, and again, visually fantastic. They really set the place. They visualize it.
It feels very bureaucratic when they're at the Iron Bank, certainly.
Yeah, and then we have when they come out, the three of them come out, and we have Mark Gatiss from most people know him from Sherlock these days, I guess. Actor, writer, guy, really great as Tycho Nestoris, a character actually from A Dance with Dragons. So they brought him in a bit earlier.
A very different take on him, I think, at least.
We haven't yet seen him doing the stuff that he does in A Dance with Dragons, so I don't want to say, but...
Yeah, but it seemed like he's, if you haven't read A Dance with Dragons, but he's a very colorful person when he shows up.
Colorful?
Well, maybe not.
I think
it's a circumstance.
It's a circumstance. Like, you have his bureaucrat showing up in the middle of a shitstorm, and he's like the U.S. Postal Service guy. You know,
he'll carry out his duty no matter what.
No matter what's happening. So that's we don't see that yet. We'll see.
Yeah.
I hope we see him again.
Like
they might.
You could have taken a ship to the moon, and if you had debts and he had to collect them, he'd come after you. Yeah. Like, hi, I'm here to collect my debts.
Yeah, he's a debt collector.
Yeah.
So, but. I really like the interplay.
Yeah.
I think my only real problem is, and I like the argument that they take, which is namely like, well, Tywin Lannister, fine, you've worked with him, you trust him, you believe he's gonna cover the debts.
But what do you have after that?
What do you have after that?
Yeah.
My problem is that it feels like they went from completely opposed to on that speech going, oh yeah, you're right, and completely supporting Stannis.
Let's ditch the Lannisters and support Stannis.
And that kind of throws, and I don't think that's the intention, because otherwise it throws all the stuff from before, how Tywin's going on, well, we don't have money, we have to keep the Iron Man happy. Like, well, on face value, this episode would tell you, well,
you can't.
They've given up on you.
Yeah.
So what's the point of all that? On the other hand, I think what we were actually seeing is a hedging bet.
Probably.
They've said, okay, we're going to keep you alive. We're going to keep your claim alive, and we'll see how things play out. So we're gonna give you money and men, so you can get the ships and men and so on. But we're not going to go full out support. We're not going to suddenly say, hey, Lannisters, come and pay your debts to us. We're not loaning you any more money.
And also, I mean, I think one have to assume as well, for it to be realistic, that they didn't suddenly like fund Stannis' whole campaign.
No,
it would have to be like a partial to keep him going,
keep
and
it
see
viable.
what he can do.
Keep it viable, but not like suddenly overbacking to it.
Yeah.
That's my take. I hope that's what they're doing, because to me it seems silly for Davos.
But certainly TV viewers could take out of it that all of a sudden they flip-flopped and are...
Yeah, because all it would take would be a moment in that with the Salvador scene for him to kind of reveal or to say something. But in any case, I mean, I thought it was well acted. Yeah. I really like Stephen Delaney's performance, and a lot of it is him just grimacing and gritting his teeth.
The grimacing he was doing when he was pacing was very Stannis.
The bit where, Davos was trying to make conversation, and it's like...
And the look he gives...
No, okay.
No, that's very
Great performance there.
Yeah.
Then we have the bath scene. Of course, it's more naked women and so on. So there's that for people to complain about.
Well, at least there...
Braavos,
they're in a bath.
George even has a detail, like when in the Storm of Swords, when Jaime and Brienne are bathing together, it's actually noted Harrenhal has communal baths after the fashion of the Free Cities. So that's sort of there. And as I said, Lucian Masmati, I love him, I adore him. I guess I could wish they changed the character's name or something, but at least, I mean, he is a Summer Islander. He's not a Lyseni, he's a Summer Islander who resides in Lys. Simple enough.
Who apparently stole the name from the San family, last name.
Maybe that's it. He stole the name.
Yeah.
Hey, that could
work.
A
pirate. He stole the name.
He stole the name. It's like Dread Pirate Robert, like the Sans and the most feared pirates.
Because the Sans have been around for a long while. They are a Lyseni family
of Valyrian descent. Yes. I mean, we have enough detail now. I think we can kind of hint at this. So in any case,
he stole it. Okay.
He stole it. That works. He actually said, and people say, well, Sans, they're Valyrian. Yes. Well, I'm the black sheep of the family or something. I don't know. That would have been funny. Maybe they'll use that. I don't know. But in any case, I would have liked them just to make it plain what exactly the support was. But it was great seeing. I mean, and Liam Cunningham is just, he works magic in every scene of every person he interacts with. He has like universal chemistry. So
I like the way that you see him in the scene with Salvador's son. He presents a very different side than he does with Stannis.
Yes,
there you can
absolutely
see
true.
a bit more of the
smuggler.
Of the smuggler, yeah.
Let's go from there.
Mind you, the only thing, I guess, the running joke about, well, technically I'm not a thief, I'm just a smuggler. I don't know if he would technically brought that up in that tense situation, but maybe he was just trying to lighten the...
I liked it. I thought it was amusing. But yes, wherever he would bring it up, I like the running joke.
Because it's become a little bit of a running gag that, well, technically I'm not stealing things.
Yes, I'm not stealing, I'm just moving what other people stole. It's clever.
Yeah.
And Cunningham is just a funny guy. I mean, why doesn't he have his own show? Why isn't he headlining something? Because I think he'd be fantastic.
I know he's certainly got the charisma for it.
Yeah. Then next, obviously, we go straight on to all the Yara, Asha, the Ironborn. See, it's almost easier to call her Yara because then it explains so much. Like she's a pale shadow of the actual character.
Because somebody like Yara, named Yara might behave like that.
Yeah, but Asha never would.
No.
We discussed the attack, so I don't think we need to go into a lot of it. Nice to have the music or a variation on sort of this Ironborn music.
Yeah.
Again, it's a great. I think it's one of the best pieces that he's actually written.
It's really good, yeah.
The speech, everything. Theon, the whole thing where she's trying to get him out and he's screaming, good Reek and...
Yeah, I mean, certainly, Alfie Allen does really good
work with this stuff.
When he gets those sort of things, and the scene that follows with Reek and Ramsay is strong. I just wish that we had picked up with them, trying to rescue Theon in some fashion.
I keep thinking, it would have been quite amazing to have seen it if we got it from the point where...
Yeah.
Theon
is broken,
and we were. That's the first scene we saw of him. That would have been quite a shocker, at least for those who remember. There'll be people who say, "Well, hey, that was a year ago. I don't remember this guy at all." How do we set up? Theon?
Yeah, but then we can't help you.
We can't help you, and I don't think. I think
you can't
in the
keep
end,
track of that.
In the end, the show like this kind of has to
trust the viewer to be.
I think it kind of has to be built with the sense that we are a serialized story.
Yeah.
And down the road, people will be vacuuming these up in marathons. They'll be watching 2-3 episodes a day.
2-3, I've seen people saying, okay, I watched the whole season, first season today, I'll do the second season tomorrow when they're trying to catch up.
And then in that case, it would feel much stronger. So anyways, we have the problems with this, how absurd the stuff around it is, but the basic point is well done. Yeah. And the writing for Reek, the performance from Alfie Allen, from Rian, great stuff there. And then the Hisdar. Now, Hisdar...
well, first we get Drogon eating.
Well, first we get Drogon, yeah. That's really cool, I think. Interesting. Although it does introduce then, when we have the shepherd coming, a bit of an inconsistency.
He says that your dragons took my flock.
And all my flock, for we always see is Drogon take one goat.
Well, he did roast a few others.
I guess he might have roasted a few others, but he took just one.
Because he must have... Some
of them seem to be running...
I mean, because he has the skeleton, the burnt skeleton, so he must have just roasted a couple by mistake.
Or maybe the guy went, I'm getting back my goat, and ended up finding the remains.
Yeah, don't you think it would be a little more broken up if Drogon had been snacking on it? Or do you think he has a knife and fork somewhere?
I think we're supposed to take it as having been eaten up, though.
Because that one just looked burnt.
Maybe. Okay, well, anyways, we don't see multiple dragons.
No.
Is the guy kind of being exaggerating for effect, or were they originally kind of considering having the other two dragons involved as well?
Could assume that they showed up after Drogon as well.
It's a minor inconsistency. I like the scene. I like the Valyrian. The Valyrian is really cool in all of this, to have so much of it spoken, and the fact that the Giscari Valyrian is different enough that Dany needs translation. It's too unclear. Which of course then says, on the other hand, surely when she spoke in High Valyrian to the slaves in episode...
They didn't understand everything.
They probably didn't quite get everything.
No.
They got the general gist.
I like that Missandei has... she's got quite an attitude, actually, towards the petitioners herself. She gets quite impatient with them. I think she very much... I think sort of takes the standing from whoever that she's serving, and
no, she is an extension of Dany.
She's quite imperious with them, actually.
I quite like that performance from Nathalie Emmanuel. Oh, excuse me.
But no, it is an interesting character.
It is interesting. I liked how she played it. So
it would have been very difficult to, obviously, I mean, in the books, Missandei is 6 years old, I think.
She's like 8.
She's
a child. She's a young child.
And they couldn't have gotten...
They couldn't have gotten that same going. It would have been very interesting to kind of see, but
I'm
fine with it.
Yes, I think that wasn't necessary.
The only thing about it, which I always kind of assumed was the idea, partly was that she was going to become more of a confidant and friend to Dany. And right now, they have like no personal interactions outside of business, basically. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe later she'll have someone. But you felt like they wanted to give Dany someone to talk to when she has issues, and maybe later on that'll be more of a case. But right now they're quite separated out.
Yeah.
Maybe we discuss the Hizdahr stuff. He behaves differently. Dany. One thing I'll note, obviously, if you don't remember from the books, is Dany actually takes down those bodies without prompting. Once they start using flies and they become a health hazard, she has them take them down. So this whole thing where basically she's planning to leave them out there for good, and then what she says at the end, okay, well, you can take your father's body down, but she doesn't say anything about the others.
No.
So I like the basic concept of her realizing, well, this act of justice carries injustice.
Yeah.
Because I did a collective punishment. I mean, people know collective punishment is a crime in modern terms. You don't do that as in the Geneva Convention and so on. So she did something wrong, but obviously she can't admit it.
No, I mean, I had a bit of a big problem really with her when he says that, is it right to answer one crime with another, and then you do well to remember that my treatment of the masters was no crime, and that one came across a little too much evil queen. It should have been more defensive.
Yeah, she starts a little. Yeah, it's a bit odd. It's not the Dany, but I read it. And the funny thing is, I mean, Emilia says, I mean, she's read everything, all the Dany chapters over and over again. She says that she's really deeply.
I certainly get the impression that she's very devoted to trying to bring out.
I think she has a very, very different take from what we have of what is in there. And I just don't.
And I mean, I think that people may be right. Unfortunately, the range isn't quite
It's so abrupt sometimes. So I don't know.
Because there's actually a lot of subtle nuances that would need to come across, because so much of it is in the books internal.
Yes.
So I think that trying to externalize it is a big part of the problem. It becomes a little caricaturist when she tries to externalize it.
Yeah, I would just have told her to dial it down, have her. And then, anyways. Council scene.
Council scene.
We had that again. The council scene is, other than the mace stuff, which is ridiculous. I mean, Oberyn, Pedro Pascal is fantastic in this episode throughout. Just not talking much, but just attitude. Just add this constant attitude and watchfulness.
And
the
sitting there very casually and not getting up when time
getting up, and then, good stuff there.
Yeah, I mean, this is another one that I mentioned it last week, and this is similar to the whole Ramsay and Reek, but on a smaller scale. I just wish we hadn't gotten that over sort of unsubtle second episode with the confrontation with Tywin. All of this would be enough to sell his character.
Yeah.
We didn't need that to hammer it home like that. I would have been so pleased with everything about the character so far if we'd just not gotten that scene or gotten it.
No, it's absolutely true. And
because the way he's watching everything here is just sort of analyzing how they're.
Yeah, I mean, the scene generally works, I think, quite well, and it's well shot. Again, they're really going in all in, and they decide, forget it. This world is much smaller than George's world.
Oh yeah, because they know that Dany's taken Meereen, that she's installed herself as queen.
That's so fast. I mean. It's ridiculous how fast it is. To the point, I mean, it's actually, I think they've kind of even contradicting earlier stuff about how far away we're going. So they've just said, forget it. We want this information out now.
People move at the speed of plot.
The other thing, of course, is obviously is another deviation but we've already had this in the third episode when he talked to Oberyn. It's like he knows that Dany's around. He knows she has dragons.
Yes, that actually was going to bring that up in the sense that
in the
people
books,
actually knowing about the dragons and accepting it like, oh yeah, she has dragons. And Cersei being, well, they're baby dragons. Like, they're dragons.
Yeah.
Do you know what a dragon is?
And I mean, baby dragon, I mean, Drogon is at a size now where he could actually be dangerous to a few people. And he's going to get bigger.
The idea of just first of all, accepting without question that she has dragons, which, you know, for quite a few, for 150, 160 years has been impossible because they all died out. All of a sudden somebody has dragons again, and not only are people accepting that as oh yeah, she has dragons, they're also going, oh, well, they're just baby dragons.
Yeah. It's odd and it doesn't quite fit. I mean, obviously in the books, George plays the distance. There's such a vast distance. Rumors come in, news comes in very slowly, and distorted.
They don't actually know that she has dragons.
Distorted. I mean, Varys, of course,
feeds that.
Goes out of the way of kind of taking it and making it seem even more ridiculous. Because Varys has a vested interest in hiding the truth. So... And people kind of and there is a bit where I think in the third book where Tywin is sort of saying, well, even if it's true, like he's not utterly dismissive of the idea.
No,
I think, but it's a problem for much later in time.
Yeah.
So it is that bit again. This shrinking the world down and making it all so fast and like this hammering, like immediately everyone has perfect information about what everyone else is doing. Is actually going away from one of the things George plays with a lot, which is the fact that people don't really know what's happening.
It takes time. You don't get the right information.
It's a telephone game where multiple people are bringing it to you, and it's a rumors, and so it would have been nice for that to be kept.
So, I mean, that becomes very important.
Yeah.
And after that, we have another great scene.
So the next scene, that's a new scene. It's nothing from the books.
No,
so it's a nice
but
scene.
It's one of those that we really liked from the first season as well, where you got those little scenes that really felt like, you know, they were things that we missed out because they weren't point of view characters. And here we get, you know, Oberyn and Varys interacting. And
Conlon feels always fantastic to have him screen these little interactions. Pedro Pascal is this. I don't know. I'm loving his performance more and more as the series progresses.
I honestly, I mean, you know, I wish they hadn't gone there where they went in the second episode. But other than that, and other than some of the stupidity of having people visit in the brothel and things like that, I'm very much sold on what he's done in episodes 5 and 6 here. You know, I wasn't happy with how Cersei interacted with him in episode 5, but I was very happy with what he did.
Yes.
And here, this really feels...
No, I think it's really strong stuff, and I think it's really interesting because there's so much sort of implied and sort of subtext to this conversation.
And I think he's toned down the accent a little bit, and it's
not really. I don't think so.
Oh, maybe I've gotten used to it.
You've gotten used to it. I told you.
I've gotten used to it.
Latin lover accent always works.
All right, we should tone down the facial hair as well. But,
okay.
But no, it's a really good scene. And,
it's a really good scene, and the subtext obviously they leave a lot of room for speculation about playing with Varys's origins.
Yes.
Are you really from this? And, so I hid my accent. I'm good at picking that out too.
There for accents.
It's, you know, there's if you've read the books, if you're familiar with the books, you know, there's all sorts of speculation about Varys's origins, his connections to the Targaryens.
And Varys is clearly unsettled by how sharp
Oberyn is, and the probing, and obviously this sort of he said the lawyer would find him interesting. They wanted to discuss. I mean, it's interesting.
There's a tiny little problem in this episode. Bryan, why did you have to outright confirm my joke from earlier that it looks like the Dornish have moved into the brothel? They have, in fact, moved into the brothel.
Yeah, that's a little much. Admittedly.
I mean, come on, he's a prince of Dorne. He doesn't live in a brothel.
It's a very luxurious brothel, though.
I mean, he might spend a lot of time there, but
it's convenient.
Like, where are the other? Are all of them moved in there, or is it just him?
Who's all of them? All the Dornish as well.
Yes. Or is it just him?
That's quite the bill they'd be running if they were all living there, I think.
Yeah.
You know, it would have been nice to see other Dornish around. I don't think we see them even as extras in some of these scenes. It would have been nice to have them about.
Yeah.
Ah, well.
But no, it's a really good scene.
It's a
the
great
way
scene,
it
and
finishes up with Varys sort of getting back at him a little bit there, with the implying that, well, if you don't have desires to distract you, you can go for the big things, and sort of the looks that they give the Iron Throne there.
No, really nicely done. Really nicely done. Then the cell scene when Jaime comes in and Dinklage is just on fire for the whole thing, and I already praised Sakharov's lighting and cinematography here. Just terrific, absolutely terrific stuff leading up to the big trial. And I mean, no real complaints about the general trial. A lot of it is pretty spot on to what's described. A lot of the dialogue, Purcell's dialogue, I love his sort of noblest child, the other, straight from the books. Just the most lick-spittlest man. Lick-spittlest? Is that a word?
No, but well, you may just have made it up.
So it's a word now.
And again, we're getting fabulous performance from not much said from Pedro Pascal. He's
just sitting there, really...
legs crossed, and just he's the only one obviously who questions actually the witnesses really, and points out
absolutely true.
He questions Purcell, he questions Cersei, he questions Shay. Although in Shay's case, it's perhaps a little inappropriate.
Yes, but no, he certainly seems kind of more interested, but it seems almost an intellectual curiosity about it. Because I think one can get the sense from it. But he knows, he recognizes the kangaroo court that it is.
Yeah, so he's having a little fun with it, I think, as well.
There's a whole issue, of course, that it's obviously very strange to us to watch a trial in which the prosecution brings out witnesses and you're not allowed to cross-examine them. Tyrion cannot say anything to them. I don't know how that works. I know, but we actually looked this up. I mean, English law protected the right of cross-examination. Roman law, which was what held sway in Europe outside of England for a very long time, the original Roman law basically said you had the right to look your accuser in the eye. Like, you could not be accused anonymously. The accuser had to be present. But it actually doesn't necessarily say anything about cross-examination. No.
I think a lot of it I'm not an expert in law history as such, but I get the sense that, from what I know, Roman law and such things, is that there was a lot down to the fact that, well, these people are noble, and they can be expected to tell the truth. Because obviously with the Romans you had the whole thing that you didn't just have the option of torturing slaves. You had to torture slaves if they were going to give any testimony, because they were, they were believed to be, incapable of holding to the moral values of telling the truth. So you had to torture them to be certain that their testimony was correct. Whereas a noble obviously would tell the truth. As I said, it doesn't leave room for, people leaving things out and, skewing things. But there seems to be some sort of assumption that there was a, the whole, the laws of gods and men. It's all about the gods being behind this and guiding people to saying the right things. And of course it's going to be truthful, or there will be struck down or something like that.
So I think you really have the sense that Oberyn's aware, but, I doubt I don't know, he may not have any particular opinion as to whether Tyrion did or not. I think, everyone else certainly seems to want that to be the case, and I think he's aware of it, so...
I think he likes taking a contrary opinion.
I think a contrary opinion, maybe.
Yeah.
And then, of course, this trial does lead to something new, which is a deviation. This is an interesting one to argue about. There's Jaime and Tywin, in which Jaime makes an offer to his father that he would never crosses his mind, never appears in the books. I will give you all you want. I'll stop being a Kingsguard, I'll get married, I'll have children, if you free Tyrion, or you find him innocent, or at least you spare his life. Now, on the one hand, just in terms of what is being traded here, it's really stupid, because he's really giving a lot up for something that, right now, there's no evidence that Tywin was going to say no if Tyrion said, well, let me take the black.
It is a common thing that people accused of a serious crime like this, or even much smaller crimes, will say, I'll take the black. And I guess there's no guarantee that it'll be granted, but it is fairly common that people will be granted that right.
Yeah.
So the idea that Tywin wouldn't grant his son the right to take the black, I find that difficult.
So Jaime asked for too little.
Yeah.
I think I would have wanted Tywin to say, well, we'll find him innocent.
Yes, that would have seemed like a reasonable deal.
Or we'll discredit the testimony of someone and say and reveal, that would have been Jamie should have been pushing for more.
Yeah.
But that aside, I said he never thinks about this idea.
No.
He never thinks, and it's an interesting idea. To me, it's not wildly out of character for Jamie. Like the idea, Jamie will do what he can for his brother.
Yeah. But at the same time, the fact that he never thinks about it, even though in the books he will also do whatever it takes for his brother, and it never enters his mind.
You have two different ways of looking at this. Like one is the in-text way is purely like it really would not cross Jamie's mind. It's not a matter of it's just to him an impossibility. He wouldn't even consider it. The other possibility is it didn't cross George's mind. It never crossed his mind, and he never. Oh yeah, I should have maybe done something like this. I don't know. I have no idea where he would. At least the topic should have come up briefly in Jamie's head. Like maybe I can bargain with my father on Tyrion's
But wait,
behalf.
also, is there a break point in the trial? God, I just read it, but where he would have had this opportunity. I mean, it does go over multiple days.
It does go over.
So he would have had the sense and would have had the opportunity to speak to Tywin. Yes.
So I find that
interesting
and sort of. I don't know what the answer is. Where if George is asked about it, that was actually a clever idea. I wish I thought of it first.
I tend to fall on the side that this is something that doesn't. I said earlier when we discussed this preparing for the video that I don't think that even if Jaime had gotten back to King's Landing, with his hand and everything, and not necessarily having a falling out with Cersei, I still don't think that the precedent of dismissing Barristan would give him the idea that, well, I could just give up my cloak now. I think it's as foreign an idea for him as thinking that, well, my hand could grow back now.
Yeah, but to me, the concept is there now. He knows the concept. Even if it's to him, it feels alien. It's still there. That said, I mean, I can easily see it in the book. You could just argue, well, it's just literally something he can't accept. He's put so much into his image. But he's just created this image of himself. Well, I'm going to be the Kingsguard guy who sorts things out, the mess I made.
Yeah.
That's my purpose. That's my story.
He has all these ideas about, basically living openly with Cersei, having children by her. I think he probably thinks he can have heirs to Casterly Rock by her openly and still being a Kingsguard. But somehow the idea of him, I think, is really part of his self-image, being a Kingsguard, even though he despises a lot of the things around it. Although he's now changing, but even while he was despising it, it was part of his identity. I don't think he can take that out. He is a Kingsguard.
Yeah.
He's the Kingslayer, and he's a Kingsguard.
Well said. I think actually that is really a good way to look at it. It's just it's he needs it. Like
What else is he? Otherwise, he's just a Kingslayer.
Yeah. I mean, what else can he do? I mean,
and he's given up so much for it, and then give up the cloak as well.
And then we come towards the end. Shay's testimony. Powerful. A lot of it from the book, so they made some changes. Like they didn't try to sell in the book. Shay sells that she was an innocent maid who was betrothed to a gently born squire who Tyrion made sure got killed so that he could have her for himself, and he made her do all these horrible things. And here, I think they kind of, we can't really sell the idea that she was an innocent. She's always been a prostitute.
Yeah.
But he's basically forced himself on her and made her do what he wants.
I mean, I got the impression from the book that Shay, the character, was supposed to be a better actress.
I think it's true. Tyrion even thinks at one point when she's crying crocodile tears that she was sure every man in present would want to take her in his arms and comfort her. So
here it starts quite stiffly, like she's very awkward with it. I felt that we were having a disagreement about this, that I felt it looked like she's not just fueled. I think that the anger against Tyrion is there as we see it coming out, but I think that there's more coercion and not just bribes.
Yeah, and you turn it on an interesting argument, but of course some of her testimony is specifically negative towards Sansa, considering her an instigator or a
And on the show, they've made her much more of a friend of Sansa. I mean, in the books, Shay doesn't give a damn about Sansa.
No, not at all.
So,
really.
But here they've made her care about Sansa.
And Sybil Kelly in interviews has said, I don't think she would do anything to hurt Sansa. And, well, I guess she knows
that Sansa is nowhere nearby now, but her testimony has condemned Sansa as well.
Yeah, so that's, I don't know, this looking outside of the material, yeah, if you look at that, maybe we can take it to be an indication that she's being coerced. Whereas the Shay of the novels is basically been bribed, been suborned, rather than coerced into
and
this.
And not having any anger against Tyrion either. It's more, she just really decides to jump ship when Tyrion is arrested, and she realizes that this isn't good for her, because, I mean, she's a very different character. She is, a girl who has used herself and her body to get the best she can in life, and she's been very good at it. She's been very good at landing on her feet.
Yeah.
And she doesn't want to give that up now.
But
she has no other options.
She's looking out for herself.
Yeah, she's
like, there's no one else taking care of her.
No.
So
it can be in the books look very cruel from Tyrion's perspective, but what is she supposed to do?
What is she supposed to do? That's exactly it. I mean, what would loyalty bring? I mean, there's always mountain of evidence against him.
Yeah.
What is she going to be able to say? Like, they wouldn't even have brought her out if she refused to say anything about
anything negative. No, they wouldn't have allowed her to give a testimony in his favor. That's so.
So I don't know. It's an interesting betrayal, and I don't know that the show has really done anything to improve or do anything with it. They've just maybe muddled it a little bit.
Yeah. I do think here we see now, we haven't seen Shay for a while. We haven't seen her since Tyrion packed her off on the ship, supposedly. I think here we see the follow-up to the start of episode 3, where Tywin calls for all the ships to be seized after the murder. So that's clearly what happened, I think. The ship that Bronn put Shay on never got anywhere.
Yeah.
And they found her. Exactly.
So it'll be interesting to see.
Which means that she was taken into custody, and that's also where I think that probably the coercion angle is
likelier. Whereas in the books, it's clear that she decides to go. She's not caught. No one's warned them. She just knows Tyrion has been arrested, and she decides to go on her own to look. Yeah. I can testify against him if there's something in it for me.
Yeah.
Because as the books reveal, she was promised her by Cersei, actually. Yeah. But the jewels Tyrion had gotten her and the fine clothes that would still be hers.
Yeah. And looking at Cersei, as Shay is testifying here, I think that she has been involved in certainly setting Shay up for the testimony. She's looking very pleased with herself.
There's even that. I think we can take it, but there's a bit of a hint of this in the prior episode where Tywin says that I know that you're building a strong case against. He knows that she's. I mean, it's so amazing. The Tywin of a novel detests Tyrion, just as the Tywin of a show does. But as I said, it's the kangaroo court style of it. It's simply a matter of what's the law system that they have. That you don't cross-examine. That if a witness has been called for the prosecution, the defense can't turn around and call them for themselves.
Can you say that there is a bit of a sense about the trial in the novels that Tywin thinks that Cersei has perhaps gone a little far with?
Well, not
sort of
exactly.
The farce of justice that.
Not exactly. I don't think so. What we do have is, of course, the evidence in the books from Kevin Lannister that Tywin was going to plan to let him take the Black. He wanted rid of Tyrion, but he didn't want to kill him.
No.
That's the claim anyways.
And I believe it. I believe it. I think Kevin knew. He was close enough.
The closest advisor. He's disappeared on the show.
Yes, but hopefully he'll resurface. And
it would have been nice to have someone who isn't one of the children.
Yeah.
Having Tywin's ear and his confidences.
True, having him interacting more with his brother.
But, so I don't know. I think Tywin on the show isn't really bothered by the fact that some of his evidence involves suborning and bribing or coercing people to testify. I don't think he'd care.
No, probably not. But whether the idea on the show was that he wasn't going to let him take the Black.
See, that's the thing. My read is, there's nothing different between the Tywin of the show and the book in terms of the situation with Tyrion. Why wouldn't he say, yeah, fine,
No.
That's my plan anyways.
Certainly he answers Jaime very quickly.
It is very quick. So to me,
he might already have decided.
Jamie's
and then Jamie goes and hands it to him.
Yeah, Jamie's being not the sharpest knife in the block.
Which he isn't.
Which he isn't. He isn't. So I don't mind that. I would have liked to have someone kind of reveal, like, oh, well, idiot Fulmer was planning to do that anyways.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, it does lead, of course, to the final Dinklage, Tyrion outburst.
Yeah.
His confession.
Is that his Emmy nomination reel for?
No, this is his Emmy. This is his Emmy reel for the season, and I think, depending on how it goes on from here, this season he may indeed get nominated again. I don't know if I will go so far to say that he will win, but he could get nominated for his work this season. Sure, I could see that in this episode. Last season there wasn't so much.
No. For
him, but this season there's a lot more meaty stuff.
Yeah, too bad, really. Because otherwise I could have seen, Pedro Pascal maybe.
Well, because they always make this thing of insisting on
not putting up competition, sort of.
Well, no, they put them all in as sort of not as the lead.
That's true.
So they all put them in part of the ensemble. And I mean, they should put Dinklage as sort of the lead. He is the lead, basically.
Well, I mean, in this season, you can
he's
say
not around quite as much this season as he is in the previous seasons, but yeah. So really great. Yeah, finishes strongly. I think this is the best episode to date of the season.
Without question, the previous two disappointed me something horribly,
and a lot of people.
This feels much better, and
I think the fourth episode I noticed that AV Club's reviewers considered the worst episode of the season.
I mean, the first three I was lukewarm on. There was nothing to upset me. 4 and 5 had me fuming a bit, and this one I was really quite on board with.
Yeah, episodes 3, 4, and 5 are the first time the series ever got 3 episodes in a row with a vote of 7 or under as the average. It's never happened before. Season 2 is kind of infamously uneven. It has a lot of low 7s in it. I think like 5 or 6. So it was a very uneven season as far as the forum. I'm just talking about our forum. A lot of sort of book reader fans, a lot of people who kind of look at it strongly.
The only ones that count.
The only ones that count. The ones that are looking at with knowledge of the books and really wanting to kind of
as an adaptation.
Yeah. And so we are more critical than IMDb or might be or Rotten Tomatoes. So that doesn't. But I'm just saying, for fans of the books on our forum, these episodes were kind of a string of kind of 7. And 7 is not like it's horrible. I think that's a problem for a lot of people. 7, when you treat the forum as really critical, and then you say, well, yeah, but the average is 7. More or less, people are kind of, it's a letdown compared to, I think
there's obviously a lot of difference what you put in, because we did a little comparison for ourselves the other day on what we put into what is a 7 for us, and because I tend to rank much lower than Elio for the most part. I gave the previous episode a 2. Episode 5, I gave it a 2.
Would you feel like an average episode is a 5?
I would feel like an average episode is like it could range from maybe a 5 to a 7, I guess, depending on are there any highlights that lifted it and so on.
Whereas to me, when I rate an 8, that's like a good, typical episode. There's no major problems.
Yeah.
And here's a little bit of subpar episode 7. The worst I've ever
5
given.
5 to 7 is like my, pass.
I treat it kind of the school grading scale, A, B, C, D, F. So to me, like a 6 is a D. I've rated one episode ever, I think. A 6.
Yeah.
So I feel differently, but my average for this season to date is like almost an 8.
Yeah.
And even though I thought the back quarter of 4 was really poor.
Yeah.
And various things those were like 7s. Like
I find it very strange. I mean, my average is, I think, that's probably a 5
for the whole show.
So far this season.
I've
given
out. But to you, that's
6s,
kind of like
6s for the first 3, and then a 4 and a 2.
So I mean, 6 is for you. It's like it's an above average episode.
6 for me is a pass.
But you said 5 is sort of average.
5 to 7 is the average pass range.
All right.
Because I feel like there's like yeah, it depends on are there any real highlights or real downturns. So yeah.
Led to an argument or the discussion with a friend who's much more mathematically inclined than I, who kind of suggested really you should only have a 3-point scale, which is it's horrible, meh, it's awesome.
Yeah, which means that this episode for me has had 3 mehs and 2 horribles, and plus this one now, which is awesome.
It's awesome. So
yeah,
there you go. And it's true. If I thought about awesome, this is the only episode I would call outright an awesome. Yeah. But I
so maybe we should adopt that for these anyway.
Yeah. So we would call this one awesome.
We would call this one awesome.
Even though despite the Yara.
Right.
Asha.
The Yara thing.
Yara. I find it much easier to say Yara because Asha would have handled that much better.
Yes. Yeah, I think that in this case I will forgive them, or not. I won't forgive them for that, but I will choose to forget that section and say that the rest, I, for the most part, really enjoyed it. The Meereen stuff, fine again, but there was so much good stuff that felt like it belonged in the novels. I felt like it was using the material well.
And I think King's Landing felt a lot stronger of this, like a lot
stronger.
Yes,
I mean, I've hated most of King's Landing up until now.
Yeah. So, very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Next episode, before there's a 2-week break, is
it a 2-week break?
It's a 2-week break after this one. Well, no, not 2 weeks. There's a week break.
Yeah, okay, there's a week.
There's always a week between them. Yes. There's a week break before it. Yeah.
Right. The next episode is Mockingbird.
And that obviously promised a lot of Littlefinger, which is, given how much we like the Eerie.
Really looking forward to that.
So until then, bye.
Bye.